13 disturbing SpongeBob deleted scenes, 7 levels. From a banned episode that sees our hero stealing women's panties, to a scene Nickelodeon felt was too close to a terrorist attack. These are some of the most shocking deleted scenes ever made for our goofy yellow friend. We'll start with some of the less disturbing scenes, but the deeper we get, the more horrifying they'll get. Let's start at the tip of the iceberg. Level 1. Midlife Crustacean. In 2003, Nickelodeon aired Midlife Crustacean. 15 years later, it would become one of the most infamous episodes in the show's history, because it disappeared entirely from network rotation because of one highly controversial sequence deemed inappropriate for children. Mr. Krabs starts the episode drowning in existential dread about his advancing age. Pearl basically tells him up front that he's old, but then his back aches and he feels disconnected from youth culture.
Do you think I'm old?
Well, of course I do, but that's okay. Daddies are supposed to be old.
But I'm still cool, right? Your old man is cool?
See, no one says cool anymore. That's such an old person thing. Now we say coral, as in that nose job is so coral.
Coral, eh?
Ew. When you say it, it sounds so uncoral.
So SpongeBob and Patrick invite him on their big night out to help him recapture that youthful energy.
Hey, boys! Hanging out?
Yes.
I couldn't help overhearing your big plans. And I was wondering if you had room for one more crazy do tonight, huh?
Of course. Did you want to come with us, Mr. Krabs?
Oh, hadn't even crossed me mind. But sure, I'll go.
What follows is a series of increasingly mundane activities. Sitting in a laundromat watching delicates spin, picking up highway trash, playing at a children's arcade, basically nothing young people do. Each stop leaves Mr. Krabs more frustrated. The activity feels hollow and nothing like the wild experiences he craves. SpongeBob keeps asking, "Are you feeling it now, Mr. Krabs?"
You feeling it now, Mr. Krabs?
Shh! But he's obviously feeling nothing except disappointment. The situation reaches a breaking point when Mr. Krabs explodes at the arcade, calling SpongeBob and Patrick lame nerds and babies.
You want to know what I'm feeling?
Yes!
I'm feeling like a total barnacle head!
He storms off, declaring the night a complete failure. That's when Patrick drops the bombshell, "I guess you're going to miss the panty raid."
I guess you're gonna miss the panty raid.
The what?
I said, I guess you're gonna miss the panty raid.
Yes, panty raid. Suddenly, Mr. Krabs perks up. This sounds promising. And yep, Patrick explains they're talking about breaking into houses and stealing women's underwear from their dressers. Mr. Krabs is instantly on board. Finally, something with real excitement. They climb through a bedroom window under the cover of darkness when SpongeBob reveals they score here all the time, suggesting this isn't their first break-in. Mr. Krabs opens the dresser drawer and pulls out this frilly underwear, holding them triumphantly. He's never felt more alive, more youthful.
We hit the jackpot!
Oh, yeah, Mr. Krabs!
Woo-hoo! You finally came through for me, boys! I feel young again!
Then the lights snap on. The homeowner appears, and it's Mr. Krabs' elderly mother. She catches her son red-handed with her underwear, demands an explanation, and grounds him for the night.
But it was all SpongeBob and Patrick's idea!
Go to your room, mister. You're grounded for the rest of the night.
Yes, Mommy.
Well, that reframes it all in a creepier light, right? The scene unfolds exactly as scripted, through multiple broadcasts and home video releases. No censorship, no editing, no network interference. Nickelodeon aired the complete sequence repeatedly for years across different time slots. But then, in 2018, following what the network called a standards review, cultural attitudes had shifted significantly. The hashtag #MeToo movement had sparked conversations about consent and boundaries. Breaking into homes to steal intimate garments suddenly felt less like harmless cartoon hijinks and more like a problematic message to send young viewers. Although, let's be clear, it was never really harmless to break in and steal people's stuff. Nickelodeon pulled the entire episode from rotation rather than editing out specific scenes. The controversial sequence remains intact in physical media releases, but streaming platforms like Paramount Plus exclude it entirely.
Eugene, lights out.
Yes, Mommy?
Someone's in the Kitchen with Sandy. The production team behind Someone's in the Kitchen with Sandy initially planned something that would haunt, frankly, anyone who saw it. Sandy Cheeks was going to appear completely unclothed. But that wasn't the disturbing part. No. The real nightmare lay in how the animators chose to design her furless body. Original concept art revealed Sandy's hairless form as one of the most hideous character designs ever created for the series. The artists took a realistic hairless squirrel and anthropomorphized it, creating what was described as the very definition of uncanny valley in the Spongebob sense. We're talking a giant hairless mouse crossed with a naked mole rat but walking upright and speaking. The design was anatomically accurate in ways that would have made viewers deeply uncomfortable. It was, for lack of a better word, terrifying. Without her familiar brown fur, Sandy's pink skin stretched taut over her visible bone structure, creating an almost corpse-like appearance. Her limbs appeared unnaturally thin, and her facial features took on a quality that had basically no resemblance to the cheerful squirrel audiences knew. It was horrific to even look at. Production crews who saw the early storyboards reportedly reacted with visible discomfort. The design crossed boundaries that even adult viewers found disturbing. Sandy's proportions, when rendered without fur, revealed anatomic details that felt wrong for a character intended for family viewing. Her enlarged front teeth somehow made her look even more like a rodent than she ever had. Whenever she moved, the effect got even worse. Her animations created an unsettling disconnect between her familiar voice and personality and her new nightmarish appearance. Test audiences would have watched a beloved character transformed into something that was more like a medical diagram come to life, more than a cartoon character. Executives quickly realized they had created something too frightening for their target demographic. Or anyone, honestly. The decision to redesign didn't come from censorship concerns about the nudity, but from genuine fear that the imagery would be too disturbing. Even seasoned animators found the design deeply unsettling to work with. The production team scrambled to create an alternative. They referenced Sandy's appearance from Survival of the Idiots, where she had previously appeared furless, but that earlier design was far less detailed and anatomically explicit. The final version gave Sandy underwear and softens her features, but traces of the original concept remain in how other characters react to her appearance. I guess we got lucky. The episode that finally aired retained the plot of the original episode, but completely masked the visual horror that almost made it to television screens. What viewers saw was controversial enough, but the original design would have created something far more deeply disturbing than anyone anticipated. Level 2. Life of Crime. Life of Crime contains a sequence where Spongebob and Patrick borrow a balloon, only for it to immediately pop, leading them to believe they've become criminals. What viewers don't know is that an entirely different, more graphic sequence was originally planned but ultimately cut from the final version. Jay Linder, one of the show's directors and storyboard artists, posted storyboards of this deleted scene on Twitter in December 2018. The storyboards reveal a disturbing sequence that drastically differs from what aired. Rather than simply thinking about all the fun they could have with the balloon before it accidentally pops, the original concept showed SpongeBob and Patrick engaging in increasingly dangerous activities with it. The deleted storyboards depict the duo playing a game with the balloon around multiple sharp objects. They toss it back and forth near pointed sticks, kitchen knives, broken glass, and other hazardous items. The tension builds as they narrowly avoid puncturing the balloon with each throw. Of course, they both end up getting hurt multiple times in pretty aggressive, violent ways. Finger cuts, bodies impaled with various objects. Yet somehow the balloon remains intact throughout this painful ordeal. It's only them that get hurt. The imagery grows increasingly uncomfortable as SpongeBob and Patrick continue their game despite their injuries. Blood even appears in several panels, which is surprising considering how bloodless the show has always been. There's also a pretty obvious contrast between their joyful expressions and their wounded bodies, which creates an unsettling feeling that's likely contributed to the scene's removal. Obviously, the comedy of the scene was coming from the fact that the most fragile thing in the scene is totally undamaged while the supposedly resilient cartoon characters suffer repeated injuries, but it doesn't really match the typical tone of the series, hence the decision to cut it out entirely. The final aired version replaced this graphic sequence with a much tamer scene where the balloon simply pops accidentally after they take it, making their transition to criminals less traumatic and more appropriate for younger audiences.
We love borrowing!
And it wouldn't leave them with a fear of balloons, which is always a bonus for Nickelodeon, who presumably make a lot of money from SpongeBob balloons. But for us, the best bonus of all is a new subscriber. So don't forget to hit that subscribe button so we can keep making great videos like this. Let's move on to the next level. Level 3. Procrastination. The episode Procrastination is pretty innocent in its current version. The original version, however, not so much. SpongeBob sits at his desk struggling with writer's block when he glances out his window to see a carnival in full swing. Everyone's having the time of their lives while he's trapped inside with homework. Okay, so far both versions are the same, but what viewers originally saw next would make network executives uncomfortable for years to come. Patrick Star stands behind Sandy Cheeks, methodically applying sunscreen to her shoulders and back. Sure, that visual alone wouldn't raise eyebrows in most contexts, but this wasn't most contexts. Sandy wasn't wearing her signature spacesuit that typically conceals her body. Instead, she appeared in nothing but her bikini, her fur glistening as Patrick's hands moved across her exposed skin. The camera lingered on this interaction just long enough for viewers to process what they were seeing. Patrick calls out to SpongeBob, "Come on, SpongeBob," as his hands continue their work.
Come on, SpongeBob!
For Nickelodeon, the implication of this was that we were seeing a starfish character perform an intimate act on an undressed squirrel, broadcast into family living rooms across America, which was apparently unacceptable. Nickelodeon executives began receiving complaints. Parents noticed something felt wrong about the scene, even if they couldn't articulate exactly what. It just felt weird. The network standards department likely cringed when they realized what had slipped through their review process. It was far too suggestive for the cartoon to get away with. The scene started vanishing from television airings, though DVD releases retained the footage. Fans began documenting its disappearance on forums, creating lists of other lost scenes, and questioning why certain moments never appeared on TV anymore, most of which presumably came down to Nickelodeon getting squeamish. Patrick's hands on Sandy's exposed form apparently represents everything network censors fear most in family entertainment. It was two beloved cartoon characters getting a little too close for Saturday morning television. Today, the debate has shifted to whether or not the removal was necessary or just overly cautious. After all, there's never been anything romantic suggested between them, and if SpongeBob or Patrick did this to one another, would the network have responded the same way? The secret box. Sometimes, a deleted scene never actually existed except in the minds of millions of people around the world. Throughout the secret box, tension builds as Patrick guards his precious box from SpongeBob's desperate attempts to peek inside. The entire narrative revolves around this mystery. What could be so important that Patrick refuses to share with his best friend? SpongeBob's imagination runs wild, conjuring increasingly outlandish possibilities. An albino jellyfish, stolen diamonds, victim remains, or an embarrassing snapshot of SpongeBob at the Christmas party. This last possibility plants a crucial seed in viewers' minds.
Maybe it's the world's only albino jellyfish. Or maybe Patrick's a master jewel thief and it's full of diamonds. Or maybe Patrick's a deranged maniac who keeps his victims' severed heads in a box. Or even worse, maybe it's an embarrassing snapshot of me from the Christmas party!
When Patrick finally reveals that the box contains only a string, audiences feel momentary disappointment. Then comes the twist. Patrick pulls the string, revealing a hidden compartment containing an embarrassing photo of SpongeBob at the Christmas party. But viewers never see this photo. The episode ends with Patrick laughing at the unseen image. However, this is where something fascinating happened. Thousands of viewers developed identical false memories of seeing a deleted scene showing SpongeBob in his underwear with a lampshade on his head at the Christmas party. The supposed image shows SpongeBob looking mortified while partygoers laugh at his humiliation, But this scene never existed. Not in broadcast versions, DVDs, or production materials. Yet, internet forums buzz with detailed recollections of this phantom footage. Some describe SpongeBob with ripped pants, spilling eggnog on Sandy. Others remember a red lampshade specifically. The descriptions maintain remarkable consistency despite never actually appearing on screen. Some have come to the conclusion that it did happen and that Nickelodeon pulled the footage for being too inappropriate. SpongeBob in his underwear pushing boundaries for children's programming. Others connect it to a separate Nicktoons holiday party promotional short that featured embarrassing party photos. What's so fascinating about this is just how effectively the episode manipulated viewer psychology. By building toward a reveal and then deliberately withholding it, our brains filled the gap with something scandalous enough to justify Patrick's secrecy, yet plausible within SpongeBob's universe. It's one of the greatest Mandela effects in the SpongeBob fandom. It feels like something that should exist, completing the narrative arc the episode intentionally left open. I Was a Teenage Gary. I Was a Teenage Gary features one of SpongeBob's most persistent urban legends. For years, fans have been convinced they witnessed Squidward's grotesque transformation into a snail, complete with disturbing bodily contortions and uncomfortable meowing sounds that allegedly traumatized viewers during the original 1999 broadcast. According to their memories, the supposed scene played out after Squidward gets jabbed in the nose with the snail plasma syringe. Viewers describe him rubbing his nose, mentioning he could go for some snail po, then collapsing as his back arched violently. His robe supposedly morphed into a shell while he meowed in distress, limbs retracting as his head disappeared and emerged again with a final haunting meow. Now, the episode's main transformation scene remains genuinely disturbing. The episode shows SpongeBob's eyes extending into stalks, his limbs disappearing into his body as it reshapes, accompanied by unsettling sound effects.
I take it back, Gary. Something is wrong with me. Ow.
The sequence deliberately mirrors classic monster movie transformations, particularly werewolf films, and it's easily one of the darkest moments from the entirety of the show. So, Squidward's transformation had to be similarly troubling since many fans report being traumatized by watching this episode as children, particularly during its Halloween night premiere. The grotesque imagery and SpongeBob's apparent pain during the metamorphosis generated genuine fear. Parents complained about the content being too intense for young audiences. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. The Squidward transformation never existed. A fan discovered an original VHS recording of the episode's premiere broadcast and confirmed the scene cuts directly from Squidward getting injected to all three characters singing on the fence. Vincent Waller, a SpongeBob crew member, definitively stated on Twitter that he searched original storyboards and the scene was never drawn or even conceived. Fans just invented it. The episode uses a wipe transition instead of the typical bubble transition at this moment, which many interpret as evidence of deleted content. Squidward's shell color matches his robe, seemingly supporting the transformation theory. These visual cues, combined with the shocking nature of SpongeBob's actual transformation, created perfect conditions for this very vivid false memory to form. Level 4. Krusty Krab Training Video. Krusty Krab Training Video contains one of the most jarring moments in the show's history, yet most viewers dismiss it as a moment of harmless slapstick. During the industrial training video sequence, a small green fish repeatedly interrupts the narrator by shouting, "Hoopla!" The narrator grows increasingly frustrated as the fish continues his outbursts. Then something happens that feels completely out of place in a children's cartoon. The narrator hurls a brick directly at the fish's head, an actual brick.
It sounds like a lot of...
Hoopla!
Sounds like a...
Hoopla! Hoopla!
The impact knocks the fish unconscious immediately, sending his body limp and making him collapse, completely silent. The narrator then calmly continues his presentation as if nothing happened, delivering the punchline, "Sounds like a lot of hoopla to make over a little Krabby Patty, right?" The casual violence is so genuinely shocking since there's not even any build-up to it. One moment, the fish is enthusiastically participating, the next, he's being rendered unconscious by a brick to the skull. Even the narrator shows no remorse, treating it as a minor inconvenience rather than what would realistically be a serious head injury requiring medical attention. Fan communities have debated for years whether the scene was originally even more disturbing. Some users on Spongebob forums claim they remember versions where the fish continued to be hit while already muted, suggesting the original concept was potentially darker and way more violent. Others recall the fish making different sounds or the scene lasting longer before the brick made contact. These memories have created persistent theories about deleted footage that portrayed the incident more graphically. Since the airing, the scene has become a viral meme precisely because of its shocking nature. Content creators have remixed the moment thousands of times, often emphasizing the sudden violence through sound effects or visual edits. The training video format makes it even more disturbing because it's presented as an instructional moment for new employees. The message seems to be that disruptive customers or coworkers should be dealt with through physical force. The brick throw is framed as a reasonable business practice. Well, anyone that's ever worked in retail would probably be okay with that. Production records don't have any evidence to suggest that the more violent version existed at all. As far as we know, they never did. But hey, you never know. ARG. The original storyboard for ARG contains something that never made it to television screens. After Spongebob innocently declares, "Hey, Mr. Krabs is getting all sweaty again," the camera was supposed to zoom directly onto the treasure chest game piece. But then the scene took a turn, crossing a line that even Nickelodeon's editors couldn't stomach. The scene transitioned into Mr. Krabs' mind, revealing his deepest psychological compulsion. The animation showed him surrounded by massive heaps of gold coins, but he wasn't just touching them or counting them like a normal person might handle money. He was sniffing the pile, pressing his face against the treasure with an intensity that bordered on some kind of serious psychological issue. Storyboard artist Sherm Cohen had sketched out this sequence in detail, capturing something raw about Mr. Krabs' relationship with wealth. The vision wasn't even meant to be cute or funny in the way most SpongeBob fantasies play out. This was different. This was Mr. Krabs at his most unguarded, displaying behavior that revealed just how far his obsession had progressed. It was kinda fetishy. The deleted version shows him physically interacting with the gold in ways that suggest complete abandonment of social norms. We've seen Krabs at his most greedy. This is way beyond that. He's displaying compulsive behaviors that cross into territory most people find deeply uncomfortable to witness. The animators had created something that felt too intimate, too revealing of genuine psychological dysfunction. He was kinda messed up. Someone at the network eventually made the decision to cut it entirely. No explanation was ever given publicly, but the storyboards survived long enough for fans to discover them years later. When independent animators like Maximized Animation eventually reconstructed the scene based on Cohen's original boards, they captured the unsettling quality it had that likely prompted its removal. The scene reveals Mr. Krabs in a state of complete vulnerability, driven by compulsions he can't control. His face pressed against the coins, inhaling deeply, suggests someone who has lost all perspective about normal human behavior around money. He's now a psychological obsessive when it comes to money. It's his entire reason for life. What makes this particularly disturbing is how it recontextualizes every other moment in the episode where Mr. Krabs displays enthusiasm for treasure hunting. Suddenly, his sweating, his obsessive game playing, his manipulation of SpongeBob and Patrick all take on a darker meaning. The deleted scene would have shown viewers exactly what drives him, and apparently that truth was too much for children's television. Or at least for people who know how creepy this whole thing is. Christmas Who? Hidden within the storyboards of SpongeBob's Christmas special, Christmas Who, lies a deleted moment that reveals something weird and kind of unsettling about Eugene Krabs' holiday desires. While Bikini Bottom's residents gathered around Squidward as Santa, eagerly awaiting their Christmas gifts, Mr. Krabs was supposed to call out a line that would have honestly left viewers scratching their heads. "And don't forget about me, Pony!" The line appears in early production materials, scrawled into storyboards before someone decided it crossed a line that shouldn't be crossed. The scene features children receiving their presents, SpongeBob declaring his belief in Santa's reality, and then suddenly this grown crab demanding a pony like some eager child at a department store Santa visit. The image becomes more bizarre when you consider Mr. Krabs' usual obsessions: money, his restaurant, his daughter Pearl. Never once in the series has he expressed any interest in horses or horse-related activities, at least not without money involved. What makes this deletion particularly strange is how the line was removed for unknown reasons. There's literally no official explanation for it whatsoever. The creators simply decided that Mr. Krabs wanting a pony was too weird, too off-brand, or too something to include in the final cut. But why a pony specifically? Why not money, which would have been perfectly in character? Why not something that made sense for a penny-pinching restaurant owner? The timing of the line makes it even more peculiar. This wasn't even Mr. Krabs making a joke or being sarcastic. This was him genuinely calling out to Santa, believing he might actually receive a pony for Christmas. In a show where characters regularly break the fourth wall and acknowledge their underwater absurdity, the idea of Mr. Krabs sincerely wanting a pony somehow felt too surreal for the animators to include, even in a Christmas special where logic typically takes a holiday. They allowed Sandy to have Christmas lights underwater. They let Santa exist in an ocean environment. They permitted Squidward to transform into a convincing Santa Claus, for God's sake. But Mr. Krabs asking for a pony, that apparently crossed the line into territory too strange for even this underwater universe. The storyboards still exist in Nickelodeon's archives, containing this moment that never reached television screens. Fans continue discussing the deleted line on forums, wondering what possessed the writers to include it initially, and what exactly made them remove it. Level 5. Feral Friends. The original vision of Feral Friends, as shown through the early rough storyboards, was very, very different. The original concept pushed the transformation sequences far beyond what audiences eventually witnessed. While the final episode showed characters morphing into realistic sea creatures in brief comedic cuts, the deleted material lingered on the process itself. We're talking extended transformation sequences that focused on the facial restructuring happening to each character. SpongeBob's square features suddenly changed, losing his geometric edges and his iconic goofy face into the blank, porous, irregular surface of an actual sea sponge. And next to him, Patrick, well, he became a starfish. Okay, there's not a lot more to it than that. Squidward's transformation contained the most disturbing elements. His elongated head began pulsating as tentacles emerged from what had been his legs. The rough animation showed his face contorting, features sliding across his skull as his biology rewrote itself. His large nose expanded and contracted like a breathing organ, while his eyes moved independently of each other, scanning in different directions. Can you even imagine showing any of this to kids? Not only do Mr. Krabs and Mrs. Puff become their real-life equivalents, but she puffs up so fast that she sends him flinging off into the distance. This is serious body horror going on here, but most disturbing was the duration. The final episode showed quick cuts of the completed transformations, but the original storyboard stretched each change across multiple panels, creating a 16-minute animatic. Characters remained conscious during their metamorphosis, their cartoon expressions of confusion and panic visible even as their faces restructured around them. The rough storyboard also included a deleted scene with Plankton waiting for dinner from Karen when Neptune's moon affected him. His microscopic form underwent its own horrific reshaping, magnified to show every detail of his biological reorganization. These extended sequences created an atmosphere of body horror completely at odds with SpongeBob's typical tone. They were so intensely detailed that you couldn't even really forget about them. Thankfully, Nickelodeon stepped in to remove it, replacing it with a more sanitized, brief, comedic alternative, as opposed to the horror show these storyboards designed. Level 6. Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy 4. Imagine this for a second. Bikini Bottom citizens shrinking down and crawling inside SpongeBob's head, but instead of just wandering around his brain tissue, they start vandalizing everything in sight. That's exactly what almost happened in Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy 4, before network executives stepped in and pulled the plug on what might have been one of the most chaotic scenes in the show's history. The deleted sequence would have shown the angry townspeople doing far more than just marching around inside SpongeBob's head. They were going to smash furniture, scrawl graffiti across his brain matter, and essentially turn his mental landscape into a disaster zone. Well, more of a disaster zone than it already is.
Now I have to drive 5 miles to go to the bathroom in my own home.
And I need an elevator to climb 1 stair.
We've been shrinking for years.
But this is ridiculous.
Jay Lender, one of the episode's writers, revealed this information during interviews about cut content from the series, explaining that the scene got axed because network standards couldn't allow anything that kids might copy at home, which in hindsight explains why a lot of the stuff we've talked about so far got cut out. There's a violation here that makes it especially jarring. The final episode already pushes boundaries by having an entire town literally invade SpongeBob's body in a weird, non-consensual way, but the original concept took that invasion to an even more destructive extreme. These trespassers were actively destroying his internal world, spray painting his neurons and breaking apart the furniture of his mind. The censors recognized the problem immediately. Children watching wouldn't just see an angry cartoon character doing cartoon things, they'd see specific destructive behaviors, the destruction of property, the defacement of surfaces with graffiti. These were actions kids could easily replicate in their own homes, schools, or neighborhoods. The writing team had crafted a scene so realistic in its destructive impulses that it crossed the line from fantasy into a potential instruction manual. So obviously, it had to go. Now, again, even with this scene gone, the episode was still kind of messed up. Even without the furniture smashing and graffiti writing, the concept of an entire community invading someone's body and mind remains deeply uncomfortable. The original version would have made that discomfort more aggressive, showing the townspeople not just as angry invaders but as active vandals destroying SpongeBob from the inside out. But what's particularly notable is how the scene would have transformed the episode's tone. Instead of ending with SpongeBob learning a lesson about responsibility, viewers would have witnessed something closer to total psychological warfare. The show came this close to broadcasting something genuinely disturbing under the guise of cartoon comedy. Rock-a-bye Bivalve. SpongeBob SquarePants, as a show, is known for being a little weird and surreal from time to time. But every now and then, the creative team thinks up something that is too bizarre, too surreal, even for them. The original storyboards for Rock-a-bye Bivalve contained one of those things. SpongeBob and Patrick playing house with their adopted baby Scallop Jr. would have been shown engaging in a feeding ritual that crossed lines Nickelodeon wasn't willing to cross. I think you know what I'm talking about. Our two beloved characters would take liquid into their mouths, swish it around, gargle it thoroughly, then lean over the helpless baby bird and spit the pre-processed mixture directly into Junior's waiting mouth. The storyboards even detailed this sequence frame by frame, showing the characters' throats working as they prepared the food, their cheeks bulging with the liquid, their heads tilting back in preparation. Pretty obvious where it was going. And what's worse is this wasn't even meant as a throwaway gag. It was designed to show SpongeBob and Patrick mimicking real bird behavior, where parent birds regurgitate food for their offspring. But what works in nature documentaries doesn't necessarily translate well to children's television. Actually, it never does, really. The visual of two cartoon characters essentially spitting chewed food into a baby's mouth created an image that network executives found to be off-putting, to say the least. The production team had crafted this sequence as part of a larger montage showing the characters learning parenting skills. They wanted to demonstrate how far SpongeBob and Patrick would go to care for Junior, how they'd adopt even the most primal parenting behaviors. The gargling and spitting represented their complete commitment to raising this creature, their willingness to abandon human customs in favor of what they believed Junior needed. But the scene's impact went beyond its intended message. Viewers would have watched beloved characters engaging in behavior that felt disgusting. The intimate nature of the feeding process, the close physical proximity required, the transfer of bodily fluids, it all combined into something that felt inappropriate for the show's young audience. Network standard and practices flagged the sequence immediately, saying the scene was unpleasant to watch, and basically forcing its removal from the final episode. Instead, viewers got the comparatively tame sequence where SpongeBob and Patrick simply feed Junior a worm from an apple, complete with the worm's dramatic final words, "We will bury you." Well, that's a little less gross. Level 7. Snowball Effect. In February 2002, a brand new episode of SpongeBob aired, Snowball Effect. In the episode, SpongeBob and Patrick engage in a playful snowball fight, eventually dragging a reluctant Squidward into their winter warfare. What viewers never saw, however, was a scene that would have fundamentally changed the episode's tone and likely traumatized an entire generation of children. Again. Storyboard artist Adam Haloin revealed on Twitter that original plans included a sequence where Squidward constructs something far more sinister than his towering snow fort. The scene would have shown the interior of what Squidward called his snow dungeon, a makeshift chamber of, elimination, designed specifically for captured snowmen. The artwork depicts a really weird underground space equipped with medieval-style devices for ending snowman lives. Yeah, Squidward is apparently a full-on psychopath. The storyboard shows Squidward declaring his intentions with disturbing enthusiasm, even saying, "I'll bring them to my snow dungeon and extract their valuable secrets." But the secrets he sought would never be revealed, because his methods involved permanent silencing, if you know what I mean. The dungeon featured a fully functional guillotine, its blade already stained with the evidence of previous victims. Surrounding this central device were the severed heads of snowmen who had met their fate under Squidward's increasingly unhinged supervision. The guy is crazy. Multiple snowman heads lined the walls like gruesome trophies, their blank expressions frozen in time. One unfortunate snowman hung from hooks in the ceiling, suspended in a state of perpetual suffering. The dungeon also contained a stretching rack and various ice implements designed for extracting information through pain. The scene suggests Squidward had been conducting these activities for some time, building his collection of victims while perfecting his techniques. The clinical efficiency of his setup implied he'd given considerable thought to the most effective ways of dealing with captured snow combatants. Nickelodeon executives quickly realized that depicting a beloved character engaging in, execution was entirely inappropriate for their target audience. The imagery of decapitation, even involving inanimate snowmen, crossed too many lines. The scene was scrapped before animation began, existing only in Haloin's original storyboards. SpongeBob in Random Land. The episode SpongeBob in Random Land aired on September 21st, 2019. Or, should I say, the uncensored version aired. It would never air again in this form. In the episode, SpongeBob and Squidward venture into a bizarre dimension where logic doesn't apply and anything can happen. What most audiences didn't see was how dark that anything was supposed to get. Random Land operates on chaos. Buildings float upside down, residents steal delivery bags for no reason, and the laws of physics do not apply here. So the episode builds this unsettling atmosphere gradually, preparing viewers for something genuinely strange. When SpongeBob and Squidward find themselves surrounded by mysterious doors, each one promising a different version of reality, the stage is set for something unprecedented in SpongeBob history. The sequence shows Squidward opening 3 doors. Behind the first 2, he encounters bizarre alternate versions of himself, weird caricatures with oversized features and disturbing expressions. These scenes made it to air intact. The 3rd door was different. Originally, it led to Squidward's bedroom, immediately recognizable to any longtime viewer. Then the screen cut to static. What emerged from that static was a black and white image of Squidward, unlike anything the show had ever featured. His eyes glowed an unnatural red, hyper-realistic in their detail, while dark tears streamed down his face. The image wasn't animated in the show's typical style. It looked photographed. A piercing scream echoed from somewhere off camera. Squidward slammed the door shut. This wasn't random horror for shock value. The scene directly referenced Red Mist, one of the internet's most notorious creepypastas about a lost SpongeBob episode where Squidward takes his own life. The story had circulated online for years, featuring detailed descriptions of realistic eyes, disturbing imagery, and audio of screaming children. By even including this reference, the show's creators were acknowledging a dark corner of fan culture that had grown around their innocent cartoon. Nickelodeon's censors moved so fast it was crazy. The scene vanished from all subsequent broadcasts, replaced with a harmless shot of baby Squidward. International versions, particularly in the UK, removed the sequence entirely, leaving an awkward cut where Squidward simply closes a door without opening it. That doesn't even make sense. The deletion wasn't surprising, really. The original scene crossed every line that television standards maintain for children's programming. It featured hyper-realistic horror imagery, referenced fan-created content about self-harm, and included screaming that could easily traumatize young viewers. The show had occasionally pushed boundaries before, but never quite like this. The scene exists now only in screenshots and bootleg recordings. But boy, the fans will never, ever forget it. If you want more weird Bikini Bottom content, check out this video on the most disturbing SpongeBob moments.